So Michael Knowles, or as we call him, the Daily Wire third stringer, he gave a speech at CPAC, and he made a comment that blew up and went viral online because of what he says. You know, they would argue, oh, this is a mucked up scandal, this is a fake scandal. I don't know, man. At plain face value reading of this, it seems like it should be a scandal because what you're saying is kind of insane. So let's listen and then we'll break it down.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too. And if it's false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. That is the direct quote. Now, after he said this, a bunch of articles had headlines that said things to the effect of, Michael Knowles wants to eradicate trans people. So Michael Knowles and his other little Daily Wire sycophants launched a PR campaign to say, this is libelous, this is smearing, we'll sue you, you better pull down these articles. And so then the headlines on the articles were changed to just like directly quote him, where they said he wants to eradicate transgenderism, as opposed to saying he wants to eradicate transgender people. He's trying to draw a distinction to make it sound like, hey man, I'm not going too far. I'm not sounding genocidal. And so his distinction is, I'm not saying get rid of all trans people. I'm just saying get rid of the transgender ideology. But let me ask you this. If you're trying to get rid of the quote-unquote transgender ideology or transgenderism, then isn't it the logical extension of that you're eliminating trans people? Certainly not. Certainly from now on, right? Because you clearly want to ban the procedure, even for adults, from now on, right? See, it's almost like the argument he's making is like, no, I don't want to retroactively get rid of trans people. So if somebody's already trans, okay, I guess we can let you live. Wow, so kind. But from here forward, we need to get rid of transgenderism. Well, that's... Okay, Michael, I don't know how to say this to you while being kind. Both of those things are bad and wrong. Both of those things are wrong. And you could tell, look, he really is giving us insight into the far-right mind here. Because what he says at the beginning, like the confusion, is he just doesn't understand trans people. He just doesn't get it at all. So here, I'm going to play it again, and then I'll tell you why it's so telling.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too.
See, that's just flat out confusion. Like, right? He just doesn't if a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man, it's true for everybody. But like, the numbers show that trans people are a very tiny minority of the population. Now, when we let the boot off the neck a little bit, that number's going to go up a little bit, but it's going to be like, the gay issue where there was a time when the number showed, there are very few gay people. Then the more we became accepting of it as a society, that number ticked up to a certain amount. But even with it ticking up, it's still a minority of the population, and it will remain a minority of the population. Same thing with trans people. It could be, 0.0001% of the population or whatever. Maybe when you let your boot off the neck, it shoots up to 1% or 2%, right? But, like, my point here is, no, being trans is true for some people. And it's clearly something that exists in the world. The civilizations have seemingly always had some people who were like this. It's effectively the idea that you're kind of born in the wrong body. Like, you know, you may be, you may be, your sex may be male, but you effectively have like a female brain. And so you want to outwardly express how you feel inside, and vice versa. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. Who cares? I totally file that under the who cares category in the same way I look at gay people where it's like, hey, God bless, good for you. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? But for them, it's like they cling to this idea, like a baby clings to its blanket, of these traditional gender roles, and there's the pure masculine and the pure feminine, and you fit in one box or the other. And if you don't, oh my God, that's evil and wrong and bad, and it's degeneracy. But like, Michael, here's what we need to understand. Nobody gives a fuck what you think. Nobody cares about you and your goofy, uber-traditional ideology, clinging on to this ideal past that never even existed in the first place. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And, you know, the overwhelming majority of people either are or will eventually be totally comfortable with the idea of some percentage of the population being gay or trans. And you might cling to the opposite idea, the traditional gender roles, because of religion or because of culture and tradition or whatever. But ultimately, those ideas, that's not gonna hold in the long run. It's just not. Because this is not by any stretch of the imagination a convincing argument. And whether you said, you know, let's eradicate trans people, or you're saying let's eradicate transgenderism, both of those comments are bad and wrong and kind of dumb. It's just like saying, you know, not let's eradicate gay people, like let's eradicate gay ideology. And it's like, what does that even mean? So what, nobody's allowed to talk about attraction to the same sex anymore? You know, is that it? Like, how dumb is that? How stupid is that? How useless is that? They have nothing but culture war 24/7. And by the way, their obsession with the culture war and the leaning into the culture war issues also serves as a trick to distract people from the reality that these people all support robber barons who are, you know, stealing your money on a regular basis. Billionaires pay a lower effective tax rate than the working class does in this country. And they're on the side of the plutocrats. They're on the side of the billionaires. And so they want to distract from the fact that everybody's getting robbed. And they want to divide and conquer the working class along culture war issues. But look, again, this isn't going to work, man. Because I think that the default perspective for most Americans is just like, whatever, man, live and let live. If you're not bugging me, then I don't care. I don't care. And he is so far gone from that ideology. That ideology is nowhere in the room when he's around. And so, again, the nitpicking over, I didn't say eradicate trans people. I'm not literally calling for a genocide. I'm just saying eradicate transgenderism or gender ideology. So from here on out, we can have no more trans people. Well, look, I hate to tell you, even if you were, in theory, to somehow make it, which you can't, that nobody ever talks about transgenderism ever again, ever, there's still going to be some people who can tell from a very young age, like, yeah, something's off. I'm, my sex is male, but I feel female. Or my sex is female, but I feel male. That's always going to exist. Whatever you want to call it, or whatever you don't call it, that is clearly a thing that exists in some percentage of the population, and you can either be normal and cool and like, great, do whatever you got to do to feel better, or you can be a weird fundamentalist freak who has a vicious and hateful ideology. But again, I want to make something clear here. They originally argued, him, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, all these guys. No. We're just trying to protect the kids. We just don't want some 4-year-old being able to transition. And, you know, normies look at that and they go, yeah, I get that. You should probably wait until you're a little older before you make that decision. I mean, you literally don't know anything about the world when you're that age. So I get it. That's perfectly fair. But then, slowly but surely, they let the mask slip more and more and more and more, to the point where Matt Walsh said on Twitter he thinks a transition surgery should be banned even for adults. And Michael Knowles is saying transgenderism should be eradicated. Well, there is no interpretation of what the direct quote he used, not the misinterpretation or interpretation of he wants to eradicate trans people. Even the direct quote you use, eradicate transgenderism, there's no reasonable interpretation of that. There is no world in which that makes sense. There's no world in which that's correct. That's just you flexing your authoritarian impulse. And by the way, still at this very late date, final point, they still don't accept, the basic explanation of what's going on here. Namely, that yes, your biological sex is totally unchangeable. Your sex is one thing, your gender is another. So biological sex is exactly that. It's biological. So if you're born male, you're male. If you're born female, you're female, right? Like, that's the hard and fast, hardwired type stuff. Of course, everybody agrees to that. Trans people agree to that, of course. Gender is different. Gender is cultural. Gender is the social construct. Biological sex is not, but gender is the social construct. There's a difference between sex and gender. And the idea around gender is, we have all these arbitrary guidelines and rules. Hey, pink's the girl color, blue's the boy color. High heels are feminine, flat shoes are masculine. And by the way, those are two perfect examples of how made up it all is. Because back in the day, high heels used to be viewed as masculine. Why? It was Ottoman soldiers had to wear high heels to ride their horses, and so it was viewed as very masculine. Well, that flipped at some point. Pink used to be the boy color, and blue used to be the girl color, and that at some point that flipped. So gender is totally cultural. It's just a totally arbitrary framework. And so somebody can be born biologically male but want to embrace the female gender. Trans person, right? And there's something about that appears to be pretty hardwired. So I don't know. The fact that they struggle with this so much is weird to me. Like, why do you struggle with this so much? It clearly exists, right? So anyway, there you have it. No matter how you slice or dice these comments, no matter how you want to parse them, even if you grant him, hey, the headlines were unfair because you don't want to eradicate trans people, you just want to eradicate transgenderism. You're not really helping your case that much, dude. Like, that is still a terrible thing to say and a really, really dumb thing to say. And for these guys, I don't know why they're so obsessed with this issue, but in some ways it's clear that they're telling on themselves. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take $0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.